We have a new world 4 by 1 mile track.
What we did that night was something incredibly special, not just from an Irish athletic standpoint, but from a humanitarian standpoint.
We were running with each other and not against each other.
And when John O'Shea said he was going to put John Tracy on the first leg to run against me, he did that for a reason.
Tracy giving it everything as they hand over now.
I knew it was on for sure.
We were this magical team on a magical night doing something special.
The men have done it 10 seconds off the world record unofficially.
We're privileged this evening to have together the 4 athletes in the order that they ran as well. It was Eamon Coughlin, Marcus O'Sullivan, Frank O'Mara and Ray Flynn. Eamon, you were kind of a reluctant participant up to a point, but give us a little bit of background how you ended up on the team that night.
My recollection of 36 years ago was I was injured for quite a number of months before that August night. And I had only got myself back into a little bit of conditioning training. I was just doing long distance running at the time. There was no way I could even probably run 60 seconds for 400 meters, let alone try to put 4 of them back to back over a mile distance. And a number of days beforehand, John O'Shea was on to me that he was putting together a world record attempt with Marcus and Ray and Frank and myself. And I go, but John, I can't do this. Come on, you got to come out and do that. Jesus, you got to do it. The night before, Noel is on again. And he said, Coughlin, John O'Shea said, if these guys can break the world record for the 4 by 1 mile relay and you're not on the team, it'll be a shame and you'll be sorry that you never did it. So he twisted my arm with the persuasion of John O'Shea for me to go do it. But actually before that, he had said to me, well, you can go to hell, he says. I'm going to get John Tracy to run in it, he said. He'll be doing better than you in the race. So that's when Noel convinced me, well, okay, I better go and run the race instead of John and try and be on the A team that night.
And of course, you were the existing world indoor record holder for the mile at the time as well. So there was a lot riding on your participation.
There was a huge amount of pressure, and I really just didn't want to do it, only because I was coming back from injury. I wasn't injured at the time, but I just knew I wasn't in the proper type of shape to be able to run anything close to a 4-minute mile, let alone try and break the barrier. I just remember when we arrived there just thinking, how in God's name am I going to be able to help these guys out? I'd better not let them down. So we met with one another and off we went, and we started to do our warm-up. And as we've completed our warm-up and went back into the bowl, I just couldn't believe there was 8, 9, 10,000 people in the bowl that night who were expecting something to happen. And I was worried, oh, can I deliver or not? When I got to that start line, that I really had to try and pull something out of the bag somehow that particular night.
They do need your support and your
Marcus, you were the man that took over from Eamon on that second leg. I believe John O'Shea doorstepped you guys in Zurich. He made sure that he was going to get you to buy into this idea. So what were your own thoughts coming into the event?
We never get tired of getting together and reliving this story. And I'm going to stay true to the persona that I had that night when John O'Shea did try to strong arm us into coming to Ireland to run this 4 by mile. And I absolutely didn't want to do it. So I'm not going to change course right now and pretend that back then, well, I really did. I really didn't. You've only got so many races in any summer, in any season. And I simply did not want to give one up. And like, maybe it was the Cork man in me, I'm not sure. But, you know, we were doing this to make a living. We were doing this and I don't want to use the word mercenary, but we were just basically, how many races do you have? Well, I'm going to save it for those races. And it was one of those things that we finally, just John's relentlessness was just overpowering. And we finally said the only way we're going to ever get him off our back is to just go and do it. And so Eamon, you must have got late to the track that night, because if you saw a couple of thousand people, when I got there was nobody there. And so I was actually thinking to myself, my goodness, there's nobody here, and I've given up a whole race. And it's all I was thinking about the whole time. And all of a sudden, just like what Eamon did say, it was 8,000 to 10,000 people all in that bowl area, all sitting on the grass. And my goodness, the anxiety just started to skyrocket. And for the first time, I really felt, okay, we're really expecting, that this audience is expecting us to do something special here tonight. And everything just kind of, all my resistance kind of fell back into the background. I'd never felt more ashamed after it was all done, because what we did that night was something incredibly special, not just from an Irish athletic standpoint, but from a humanitarian standpoint. And this was a time in the century, if you will, whereby the whole world were coming together. You had the Live Aid, and you had all the aid concerts, and this was our contribution. This was John's contribution. And I seemed to be oblivious to it at the time, because I just saw it as another race. But in hindsight, looking back, we did something that night that I think for the real reasons why it's living on as long as it has, other than the fact that it hasn't been broken, is the fact that it was just become such a special night. And for me, it is one of my most fondest, because I think it brought the best out of me and it brought the worst out of me. And ultimately, I felt very, very connected as the years went on to it. And my interesting kind of end piece to that is, about 2 years ago, a kid showed up from Ethiopia by way of Australia, and he was an orphan. And he came into my office, and with all the greats that we've had, including you, Eamon, and Ron Delaney, he didn't recognize anything in there. But all of a sudden, he looked up, and in the corner of the office, he saw a framed picture that John gifted us that night, all signed on the back. And it was Ethiopian art. And he looked at it, and he said, I recognize this. And the story then got relayed to him. And who would have ever thought that some 35, 33 years later, the connection could still be made by a person from that area who was able to connect with something that we had done 35 years ago. So it kind of came full circle. So there's a lot of there's a lot of reasons why it's so special, and not saying that the least of them is the world record, but for me the least of it was the world record. It was just something special, and the way we can all come together here so many years later and bond because of it, I think it has created a fraternity of our own, very, very special group of people. But I grew from it, and I was very, very happy to be a part of this group and that evening.
Well, the talk around here is that a world record is may very well definitely be on. It's a nice contradiction in terms, but so much of it really depends on yourselves. So Frank O'Mara coming down.
Frank, you were on that third leg, a vital leg as well, and like Marcus, if you give us a little reflection as well about what it was like when John O'Shea put the gun to your head, for want of a better word, and how you look at it today as well.
But we were in Europe. The season was about to end. We were at Zurich. Process was coming up, and we didn't want to give up a chance to earn money. But on the night, I think all of us had so much experience having run relays in America at Penn, especially when there's so much pressure. So we were used to running solo times, and we were used to the pressure of making it happen.
And he'll hand over to Ray Flynn for the fourth and final mile. There goes Ray Flynn. Good luck to him. Jimmy. Yes, good luck to Ray.
What a finish you had on that night as well. I'd like to see as well, Ray, how you responded to John O'Shea really, I suppose, at the time, but your own memory, like the boys as well.
I think, we were all competitive with each other, and we ran all over the world, and it was a great era and a great time to be Irish and a great time to be a middle distance runner. And I think that we were all successful in our own way, in our own world, in our own races. And I think the idea of coming together probably was a little outside of the box. So it took a little twisting of our arms to sort of get us in that mindset. And I think that's really what I think everyone is really displaying here. Everybody was coming from a little different place in their training and in their racing. But, you know, it's so ironic that this coming together race sort of has endured longer in our, I mean, we're older now, all of us here, and it's endured longer in our lives and in our connection with each other as people and as athletes than almost anything else we've accomplished. And it's so ironic that as a team we are closer together now almost than being individual. It's great to have been part of it. And on that night, yeah, I think we definitely started to feel it when we realized the size of this undertaking. But I think we were all up to it. I mean, these boys were champions and great milers, and I think we all knew finally when we had decided to come together and do it that we could do it. And yeah, I did feel a lot of pressure on the final leg because it's like, oh, you better not mess it up now, because the boys had given me such a great lead, you know, that we were inside the record by a good many seconds. And, you know, I'd have to run a really bad leg to lose it. Everybody exceeded what they were capable of on that night, and it was magical. And it was definitely a night for us all to remember, not just as runners, but as a team and as Irish and as people.
When John O'Shea kind of put it up to you and said, I put in Tracy instead of you, you know, there was a bit of pride, I'm sure, involved in that. And John was neck and neck all the way down with you as well. So just give us a little insight into the race, the mile that you ran yourself as well.
Yeah. Well, we were fortunate in Ireland at the time that we had Ray and I were battling against one another for years. Marcus and I were battling one another for years. Frank and I were battling one another for years. But more importantly, we were battling against one another for years on the circuit. But on the outside was John Tracy, obviously the Olympic silver medalist, double world cross-country champion, great 5,000, great 10,000 meter runner, great road runner. And when John O'Shea said he was going to put John Tracy on the first leg to run against me, he did that for a reason. And the reason he did it was because he knew I wasn't going to let John beat me at all. But at the same time, I knew that John would be the one that was going to help me all the way around.
3 laps. 3 minutes, 1.8 seconds after 3 laps. And John Tracy now looks as if he's going to put in his challenge again on the back straight. Eamon Coughlin holding him off with that.
And with about 300, 250 to go, John Tracy came right up on my shoulder, and I took a quick look to my right and I saw it was John, and I began to put a spurt on again. And as I came down the home straight, I knew I had a bit of a gap on John, but he came on me again as we went down the last 50, 40, 30 yards and just about caught me on the line. I think I might have only beaten John by something like 2 or 3 tenths of a second, and ended up running 4 minutes 00 point, I think 2 or something like that. The only one of the 4 of us not to break the 4 minute barrier on that particular night. When I passed that baton to Marcus, by God, did he take off in the style we've always seen Marcus take off over the years. And the same with Frank, and then again with Ray, who was completely on his own, because I just remember seeing Marcus out there cheering for me, and Ray. We were all cheering for one another as each of us were running our own legs, and the crowd were going absolutely berserk. The fact that we got the momentum going from the very beginning was the inspiration that helped us to break that world record.
And of course, Marcus, you were coming along then, and you saw him putting in a massive effort. Take us around your lap then.
Well, you know what, Frank? First of all, Frank made a very good point in terms of we were so used to running relays. And a lot of people might just think we randomly pick the legs, but to the best of my recollection, we almost did it intuitively. And we knew Eamon, with all due respects on that night, Eamon was the weaker of the four of us. And we knew that. We knew we needed to lead him off because we'd have more time to make up any distance if we were behind. So that was the first thing. And so then we have to take care of the last leg. And we knew, and I intuitively knew Ray was the best guy for the last leg because he could run on his own. You could just tell he was probably the best time trialist of all four of us. And so he could stay on the concentration. And at that point, it was going to be easy to see that we were going to have no help at that point. And so then the middle legs between Frank and myself, I think it was more of a toss of a coin. And I think when you gain that experience from running collegiate relays, and you go from you're weak to strong to weak, depending if you have no team, you'll always go strong to weak, and it's all these kind of little nuances. So I think we had an edge in terms of knowing how to set it up properly. And I think that was the beginning of it. Like what Eamon said is that when he was coming down the home straight, you could just sense, my goodness, this is on. To be in all honesty, and I think even Eamon would agree, we thought Eamon was probably in about 420 shape. I have to say, with all the races I've seen Eamon run, and that's professionally and internationally, I thought it was probably the most courageous run I'd ever seen from him that night, because I knew he wasn't in that kind of shape. And you really start to understand fully what it takes to be a world champion, is to do it when there's nothing there. Mm. And from a characteristic standpoint, from a mental standpoint, it revealed so much of Eamon that night. And when he was coming down the home straight, I knew the race was on, and I knew we had the ability to do it. For me, it was just a matter of the confidence that was built from Eamon. Once I went into that lap, it's like anything. It was like we wanted to relive a part of college again, where we knew we were all expecting from each other. We all had expectations within ourselves, and we didn't want to leave any of us down. I mean, there was the spectators as well too, but this became more of, I'm not going to leave Eamon down right now. As a collegiate, when we were running, we always ran faster than our personal bests that we were doing individually, which shows the power of team, and it shows the power of being able to pull together for each other. And I think that's what it really came down to once Eamon had started the momentum going.
A lot of pressure as well on the third lap, because it was being set up. You knew you were well on course at that stage, but a lot of pressure taken over that baton on the third lap, Frank. What's your memory of that?
I was so excited about Eamon's first leg and how he battled. And when Marcus took over around 56 first lap, I knew it was on for sure. And then you kind of get into your zone, trying to prepare for your own leg. Once I knew Marcus was off and running, and we're way ahead of pace, and I knew that I just had to hold on to it. And I think I went on my first lap, about 56 as well. And I probably struggled a little bit in the middle part, but I think we knew we could give Ray as much of a gap as we could to take the pressure off him. And between the three of us, we managed to get about 6 or 7 seconds. So Ray could relax and just try to knock out as hard as he might if we were behind schedule. So all in all, it was a good night, and our Ireland B teams and C teams really helped us on the occasion.
And the atmosphere, of course, Frank, was absolutely special on the night too.
Well, it was, and I think there was an expectation in the air as well. From the moment we got in from our warm-ups, we could sense that this is a knowledgeable crowd.
You have been given maybe a cushion, I suppose, to a certain degree, but still it landed down in your lap that you had to deliver, because really you were the man that was going to have to deliver that last lap, and they had put their trust in you, and John O'Shea had as well to be the man to anchor that, such an historic occasion. How did that burden fall on your shoulders?
We were used to running relays from running in the States. I mean, for our colleges, respective colleges, we ran relays a lot, and we were programmed, and so I think we all knew what to do. Give us the stick and we'll run. And I think, while I felt a lot of pressure there, I really felt that I had a great cushion, and it was mine to lose. And so in a lot of ways, I too was energized by my teammates by what they had run and by the anticipation of the crowd and the people there. Other ways, it was easy because, we were programmed, we were all in good shape. We were programmed, we were milers, we were at the top of our careers, and we were running with each other and not against each other. And I think that reality set in as we were warming up and as we were preparing, and it became something that we hadn't maybe all experienced in quite some time, where we were this magical team on a magical night doing something special.
Really deep down, this had a great sense of cementing those relationships over the years.
Well, I will say that before we got on, I was messaging back to the guys that people get tired of listening to us here, because we've all talked about this, a lot in the past, but really it's special for all of us, the four of us especially, because we shared it. And even if people get tired of listening about it and they probably say, oh, we've heard all this before, it was ours and it'll always be ours. And it was a bonding time to be a great Irish middle distance runner, and we shared it together, and it'll be with us forever. We talk quite a bit together and reminisce, and it's been good. It's good to remember, and it's good to share the good memories. I know we were competitive once with each other, but we're all closer now, I think, than we ever were.
Took a lot of vision to pull that together as well. And maybe it's time to acknowledge that as well. John O'Shea, only for John O'Shea, I suppose, getting that momentum going and bringing you all together. That would never have happened. Neither would you have had a crowd like that in Belfield on a night like that. So great showmanship, but also great vision as well.
His whole vision, and the word goal was a sports vision. So he was a great, great humanitarian. And as you said, Frank, a visionary when it came to putting on this particular event. But what he recognized more than anything else was Marcus O'Sullivan, Frank O'Mara, Ray Flynn, and myself were probably the best milers in the world, in the top 10 or whatever it was at the time. Ray 349, I had run 349, Marcus was hitting on 350, Frank was hitting on 350 for the mile. So he really had so much pride in what we were achieving as athletes in our own individual rights, that he saw that opportunity to bring us Irish guys together on one night, break a world record, and to create more awareness of goal and what they were trying to achieve around the world to help people less fortunate than us. So hats off to John O'Shea for his bullishness, for him hustling the hell out of me to twist my arm, to change my mind, to run on that particular night. And had he not have done that, I wouldn't be on this Zoom call tonight. John Tracy might be on it instead. But it was that great visionary of John and Noel Carroll, and the support of Noel Carroll, and the respect he had for us Irish athletes at the time, that he wanted to showcase us and help raise awareness for goal.
I will say that he was relentless. And he before social media, we take it so much for granted now, but I couldn't help but think the power of the pen back then. John was able to do something that nobody else could do. I mean, even the Federation, he was the envy of the Federation, like the BLE as we called it back then. They would never be able to have pulled us together, but John was relentless, and his vision, as Eamon said, he was so adamant that Eamon had to be on this team, so adamant, and I think he believed in him so much, and he believed in the group, and maybe deep down he believed that if this was going to come to fruition, it was going to last for a long time. So I have to credit John, who's such a colorful character. You couldn't script it in a book the way he delivers his entry into a group, and I have to thank him for a piece of my life like Eamon that would not have existed without him, and his courageous and determination attempt to keep us together for that one night.
Well, he was a bit of a rogue, and he was a lovable rogue, and I can just picture here, you see him with Eamon,
Yeah.
and it's just sums up the relationship. He kind of told you so, and Eamon gets it. But he was a lovable rogue. But my recollection of him is a fun guy to be around. Yes, a visionary, but a rogue into the bargain.
Yeah, well, I think we all appreciate what John did, and especially as time has gone by and we've gotten older. And I remember one thing though, he had a really good pitch, because each of us, when he went to us, he would have said to Marcus, as he would have said to me or Frank or Eamon, hey, listen, Coughlin's running, O'Sullivan's running, O'Mara's running, and he really got you, because you didn't really want to not be on that team, because there was a chance to break the world record. And so that's really how he got us out of our comfort zone. Really, he really sold it well and had the pitch, and there was that little bit of competition in us that we didn't want to be not on that team either, because even though we were a little distracted, we knew that, hey, that does sound interesting, and he pitched it well. He was a good salesman, you know. And so they raised quite a bit of money that night, which was great into the bargain as well.
John, he made a great, I suppose it was a great platform as well for goal at the time.
You know, in today's day and age, where, you know, athletes nowadays have really big commercial contracts, they wouldn't have been able to do what he was able to do that day. We all wore gold, a singular uniform for charity. That in today's day and age, where athletes are under contracts and they probably wouldn't be able to not wear a singular uniform like that, that was really special too. So he not alone did he get us together, but he got us to wear this uniform that really represented what he was. His vision was to raise money for a charity that he really believed in.
You all came through the American university system and scholarship road as well, that I went down myself on. Just like to ask you one or two questions each on it, and maybe put the two questions together. One, what was the greatest challenge you faced in going to America? And number two, is America, in your view, still the best pathway for a talented Irish athlete to go?
The greatest challenge for me going to America was just actually trying to settle down. When I went over there as an 18-year-old kid, it was like going to the moon back in 1971 when you headed off to America. You didn't think you were going to ever get back to Ireland. And while I arrived in Villanova and loved everything about the campus and loved everything about my teammates on the track, I just found school really tough. I found working out with the guys really, really tough. And as a result, those first 6-7 months in Villanova were just very, 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 very homesick for me. However, I was very fortunate that while I did walk out in the middle of the night and went back to Ireland to represent Ireland in the World Cross Country Championships as a junior, with a little bit of an injury, it was my escape route, because I decided when I got over to run in Cambridge in the cross country championships, I wasn't going to go back to Villanova. So obviously that very much disappointed my family, my parents, my girlfriend Yvonne, and everybody around me, you know, my coach Jerry Farnan. So I was very lucky that Jumbo saw something in me that I probably didn't see in myself, and he offered me an opportunity to start afresh. And when I started afresh, I knew exactly what I was going back to, and I went back with just ease of mind, and I never regretted it thereafter. But that was the biggest challenge for me, just settling down in that American environment. You know, what's the best route? You know, the grass is always greener on the other side. America can be very suitable for some people and not necessarily suitable for other people. It all depends on the temperament. It all depends on their circumstances. It all depends on what goals they may have from an educational perspective. There's so many little pieces come into the equation now, and it's kind of hard to make that choice. However, facilities in Ireland have improved enormously, so you don't have to go away to America for facilities. But I think that the one most important help that you get in America and the collegiate system is that transition period from the time you're a junior coming out of secondary school at 18 or 19 years of age, for those 4 years right through to when you're 21 or 22 years of age. I think the competition in training with your teammates, irrespective of what university you're in, provides a better opportunity for you over there. And I think the opportunity for competition in your region and the competition in America in general at a national level just really helps you to think bigger, act bigger, grow bigger. And if you've got the talent to succeed, I think America is probably the best route even to this very day.
And Marcus, of course, you're in the position of coach at Villanova. Your own thoughts of what were the challenges and your thoughts really about the route for Irish athletes at the moment.
I think for me, well, first of all, I wasn't as good as Ray or Frank or Eamon. I actually didn't get a scholarship coming out of secondary school. I sat for a whole year, took a job. And at the time in the beginning of the 80s, we were in a tough spot economically in Ireland. So for me, I always say, was it a big risk? It wasn't as much of a risk as I now look back on. It was really a way out. It was an opportunity to kind of go in a direction. There wasn't any choices really at that point for me. And so, but when I got there, I certainly had some homesickness. But I knew in my heart of hearts it was the right direction for me to go, educationally, even nothing else athletically, but educationally. And so for me, I think it was certainly the best place for me. The US has always been a great place for the willingness of Irish athletes to go there, but it has more to do with the mindset and the growth and the development, along with the competition. But I would also say is that Ireland has come such a long way in terms of facilities, in terms of the ability to be able to grassroots and continue to continue athletes in Ireland. And it's about fit. If a young athlete from Ireland doesn't fit into an American system, it can be, quite frankly, a miserable time for them. And so I think a lot of it is searching out, are you able to adapt into other environments? Are you ambitious enough to be away from home? Are you okay with all of that stuff? But I think more importantly now, and this has taken some decades, but I think the mindset of an Irish athlete has grown tremendously in the last, say, decade. You can see it, the amount of running that's taking place in Ireland right now. That's contagious. Well, we lost a bit of momentum in after the 80s. And I think we looking back now with Ray and Frank and Eamon and myself, along with John Tracy and a whole host of other people around that time, we were going through a golden era that was spawned from, say, the likes of Ron Delaney back in the 50s. And for me, I would watch Eamon on a Sunday night. We'd get the feed on RTE, and I'd want to stay up so late at night to see him on the boards. And it was a contagion that kind of went from generation to generation. And I think we're on the verge of picking that up again right now, and more power to the athletes that are residing at home that are fostering that environment. I think it's very, very important. And I think Ireland has now got the facilities, but it also has the verge. We're on the verge of having the mindset needed to be as ambitious as I think we got to get and be when we went to America because of that time frame.
But when I think about America, I think about expectations are so high in you, and you sink or swim when you get over there. And so being out of your comfort zone, being somewhere new and different and challenging, really makes you step up to the plate and become what you're capable of, or you don't. And John McDonald certainly had high expectations of all of us. And I think expectations are higher at home now than they've ever been. But in America, it's still an Irish guy coming to America on a scholarship is expected to produce results immediately. And you'll always be asked to step up to that higher level of performance in the States, where they think you can probably hide a little bit in Ireland. And so I would think that if you really think you can make it, you'd be challenged to do so in America, and America would still bring the best out of you.
You struggled in the early days there on the hills in Tennessee, but you certainly kept the commitment, and you know, you're still the Irish record holder at 1,500 meters in the mile still. Just tell us a little bit about your early experience at ETSU, and if you think the pathway for Irish athletes today, should some of them go to America or should some of them stay at home? Or what's your overview on it anyway?
Well, it was a different era during the 70s and 80s. As Marcus said, the opportunities were not there for us athletes in Ireland. But I will remember and always believe that this was a dream come true for me, to get an opportunity to follow in the footsteps of the great athletes, the great Irish athletes before me, starting even with Delaney and people before that. And I think that each of us was a dreamer that we would become greater athletes and would become Olympians and follow in those footsteps by having the opportunity to come to America. The other thing is, it wasn't like you could just go home if you wanted to go home for the weekend. People now are more affluent and they could fly home and even phone call home. I remember when we were first years or sophomores in college over here, we weren't calling home even on the phone. It was so expensive. So the world has changed, and Ireland's facilities and young athletes now are progressing. The facilities are second to none in Ireland. But I will always say, and I believe this, and of course it's in the business that I'm in today, the platform of competition in the collegiate system in America is second to none in the world. And to echo what the guys are saying, if you really want to be at the very top, I think it gives a greater opportunity for constant high-level competition, understanding and acknowledging that there are pressures and it's not easy. But you know, we all kind of came through it. It was a boot camp for all of us. But hey, there was no easy way to become good. You don't get good, by giving up. Our records are still, the records are standing. So the test of time has proven that the greatest successes, stayed with those athletes who came over here to college. And so I really feel strongly that it's still the best avenue, but I also acknowledge that we're having some great young talent in Ireland. I think the challenge is to bring that young talent to the next level above.
What's your abiding memory, say, of coming through the Irish system before you actually got to the point where you were good enough to get a scholarship to America? Any memories that stick out? A short-term memory that might hit you of the progress you made through the Irish system here.
So it was completely different back then, and the facilities weren't there. The support mechanisms were only your parents and your coach and your running club. Outside of that, we didn't have, with the Irish sports, or with the Sport Ireland now, and with the government support mechanisms, when you achieve certain criteria, well, you can get certain grants to help you with your physio, to help you with your travel, and to help you with your equipment, and to help you even with your food. That didn't exist back then. And it doesn't really exist, I suppose, that much for teenagers nowadays. So it really was all dependent on your coach. But I always remember coming through as a 15, 16, 17-year-old Tom Gregan, who went to Villanova with me, as a matter of fact. Tom was a 401 miler at 16, 17 years of age coming out of Ireland. And he was the number one guy going to America. But I'll always remember my coach saying to me, Eamon, I don't want you to be breaking world records, which Tom was going after, underage records at the time. I'd rather have you ready for when you're 21, 22, 23, 24. I want you to be mature, getting more mature as you go through those late teenage years and into your early 20s, rather than trying to break all sorts of underage records. So I was struck by his foresight and his belief in me. And I just kept plugging away and plugging away and plugging away year after year after year. And when we went to Villanova, Tom went out as a 401 miler. I think I might have been around 409 for the mile at the time. But by the time I graduated from Villanova, I ran 353 for the mile. And Tom had still only run 401 for the mile after all those years in Villanova. He didn't perhaps adapt to Villanova the same way that I eventually did. So I was kind of lucky. But nowadays, it's probably not that much different, really, except for the support mechanism that you get from the Sports Council.
And you would have kept in touch over your time in Villanova. You would have kept in touch with Jerry as well.
Well, to be quite honest with you, yes, the only way you kept in touch was writing a letter, or if you got a roll of $10 worth of quarters and you stuffed them into the telephone machine, hopefully by the end of the phone conversation, your money might come back down out of the phone. But Jerry's philosophy when I went to Villanova was, you're with Jumbo Elliott now. You do what Jumbo says and don't listen to what I have to say, because he didn't want to offer any type of training advice that might conflict with what I was doing at Villanova. So he left everything. So that was, again, on his part. He was able to let me go. He was able to let me fly the nest, and he was able to allow me to explore what I was about to experience at Villanova.
The thing that resonated with me a lot was the caringness of the coaches that were at club level, from all the way up through juvenile, underage. Donny then became probably the most, striking of influences for me, where he took me under his wing, probably right as I was finishing secondary school. And really, Donny was the one over that year where I left secondary school and I wasn't going to America. Donny was coaching me all that year. And I found that when I went to America, I was still very attached to Donny. And I think more so when Jumbo Elliott died the following March. So I was not even there a year and Jumbo had passed away. And I certainly floundered for a couple of years, but I think Donny kind of threw me a safety line my junior year and reconnected in a stronger way, much stronger way, knowing the sense of urgency for 1984 for the Olympics coming up. And I think since that time, Donny and I have always been very, very connected. I'm never not on the phone with him, and I think since that point, I think he's probably been, along with Tom Donnelly, obviously, but probably one of the most influencing people in my life in terms of how I see things and how I approach coaching as well too.
And of course, it's the great Donny Walsh we're talking about there.
My great coaches. Declan Donahue, who was the coach of the Irish Olympic team in Seoul in '88, was my coach at secondary school. But I also was around a lot of great club mates. It's as important to be around people who are accomplishing what I'm setting the bar for you.
I think one thing I'm hearing from this call, and what we all have in common, is we all came under the influence of people in Ireland and young coaches and club coaches who fostered a great love of the sport and a passion for it that we all shared. I think each of us really, really wanted to succeed and be a good runner, be a top athlete. And we were all guided by people in our towns. And I had these people too that were really great supporters and people who really helped all of us, and it helped me especially when I was a young kid. And it culminated with John Dooley too, brother John, who really has been a great influence on many young athletes in Ireland. But I think that he would acknowledge too that there are local coaches who worked tirelessly to really guide all of us. And I think fostering that love of the sport to be a better runner and talking about history and putting it in perspective, I think it launched us to where we ended up. So even if it wasn't as technical, it was certainly encouraging. The first coach I had, back when I started running, this coach was talking to me about interval training, from out of a book. But nevertheless, I was intrigued by that. And so he didn't have to be a big name coach, but he helped me just to understand, hey, this is how the good guys train. This is how better runners train. And it just got your imagination running.
Just to put it into perspective, where you think Irish athletics is at, and particularly Irish athletes at the moment.
Frank, I was tuned in for the weekend, obviously watching the micro meet as well as the other races in the last few weeks. And it's just really exciting to see how some of these young Irish boys and girls are beginning to perform at such a very, 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 very high standard. And I was, I won't say slagging Ray off, but I alluded on Twitter there the other day that we might have the next Irish mile record holder coming from County Longford again after all these years. But what's brilliant about these young athletes is, you know, it kind of goes around in cycles, and maybe this is the new cycle. We had a great cycle in the 70s and in the 80s for that wonderful decade. And now I think the time has come again, because in order for me to win a race, I had to beat the best of the other Irish guys. And for order to them to win, they had to beat us Irish guys as well. And that's beginning to emerge now in the men's 800 meters and the women's 800 meters, which is quite powerful, in the men's 1500 meters, even in the women's 400 meters, and then all the way down to the 60 meter dashes. It's wonderful to see that competitiveness at such a high standard amongst our own people. So in order for them to win, they have to beat the best of their own. And it's wonderful to see that again. And I think it's the first time in quite a long time where I'm really looking forward with excitement to the performances of these young athletes over the coming months and the coming years.
You want to see us succeed. And when we talk about where you're going to be, whether you're going to be in America, whether you're going to be in Ireland, it's not as relevant, because I think what transcends all of that is the fact that you're Irish and it's Irish athletics. And when you a bit of momentum coming, and you could really sense it this past weekend, that there's something being ignited. And I go back to that ideology of you hope that the mindset is uplifted and it's being shared amongst the group, if you will, of the international athletes and the Irish athletes that are coming through, and the younger athletes, and foster it. And so once you have that ignition going on now, I think it's important that it's being utilized. And one of the things I always felt, that we were never utilized for youth in Ireland at the time. And it was one of that I think we were always willing to come back to Ireland for in the off season, was to share our successes with the young people. And I think it's very, very important to make sure that this group of prospering Irish athletes right now, it's important to foster the younger kids, to make sure that you can kind of get the conveyor belt going and you can get the continuum going as you move into the next decade. So I was very happy, thrilled to see so many Irish athletes do so well this weekend.
Of course, Schieffer ran her great time in Arkansas yesterday was 2:00.54. But I think the genius thing that athletics has done the last 15 years is created this category of under 23. I think we lost so many athletes between junior and senior levels for years and years. This under 23 category gives people a chance to stay to sport longer and to ultimately thrive. I think it's really helped bridge a lot of young athletes to the senior level.
Of course, Ray, I called you almost immediately after Keane McPhillips ran such a brilliant, for a young athlete, ran such a brilliant race over 800 meters, only just right on the tail of Mark English. And I could sense the excitement in you. So you're very tuned in, of course, to athletics on a global scale, because you represent some of the greatest athletes in the world. I sense that excitement anytime I talk to you, because you're really interested in how Irish athletes are developing. And I think you see those shoots of hope as well springing up here at the moment.
Yeah, I've known Cian now for 7 or 8 years back in Longford, and he's a prodigy, and I was really excited to see what he has been running, not just yesterday, but especially yesterday. We had him in New York at the Millrose Games high school mile last year, which he won. But yesterday's run was something special, to run Mark like that and be under the senior record. He's big and strong and looks the part, so it is exciting to see this next generation of runners. And I will say, I think that all of us on this call, we want to see greatness among our Irish young athletes. We want to see them come and break all these records that have stood for too long. And I think we're all excited to see the progress. I think we should give a lot of credit also to Athletics Ireland. It's a more progressive governing body now than it ever has been. And of course, combined with these new facilities that we have, it makes it very attractive to, especially running indoors now. Also, I was impressed in the last couple of weeks with the young Irish runners who, during the hard times of COVID, made their way to these various meets in Spain and France, and just seemed to just jump on buses and do whatever was necessary just to get in races. And it takes that hunger that I remember being the same way when I finished college over here, just being on the bus in Europe and going from one meet to another, not knowing exactly where you were going to end up. So these young kids, Irish runners now, seem to have that passion, and I think we're all recognizing it.
Athletics Ireland now have something like 60,000 members. There's been a huge surge in membership over the last few years, and I'd like to. I don't know how long we've been on this Zoom call, but time, it just seems to stand still, and it's been so wonderful to be able to engage and to chat. I'd like to wrap it up really at the moment with you by asking you, to the young athletes, particularly, I think the 60,000 members, there's about 80% of those would be juveniles. And to the young athletes of Ireland, and to the ones who are doing so well at the moment, and their coaches, if you had one little message each, and starting with Eamon again, the man who kicked off the world record, if you had one little message, one little nugget for athletes and coaches in Ireland at the moment, what would that be?
Well, I guess, first of all, to work hard, to be patient, to believe in yourself. And there'll be times when it's going to be getting really, really, really tough, and it's going to be a test of your whole mindset. But just to be really, really patient, to just keep plugging away at it. And the wonderful thing about what's happening in Ireland right now is the likes of Mark English has got this young kid, Cian McPhillips, on his tail. The same with the 3,000 meters, the same in the 1,500 meters. Look at the women's 800 meters. They're all going to be competing hard against one another. But the reality is going to strike home when they go on to the big international circuit. It's okay running great times. Really so happy for them at the micro meets back in Dublin and Abbottstown. But when it comes to the international circuit and you're up against the Spaniards or the Italians, or you're up against the Norwegians or whoever you might be up with, don't be worrying about where they're from and how good they might be. You believe the fact that you're in there now, that you can do it. And if you don't do it the first time or the second time, well, by God, you'll do it the third or the fourth time once you keep that belief in yourself. Because they've all got the talent who are out there right now. And I think it's going to emerge pretty soon.
Thanks, Eamon. That's great words there. And Marcus?
Frank, I think to me the most important thing that I never fail to have any regrets about, I never sense is just enjoying the journey. From the youngest age that I can remember, the walk homes from the club at night, and I think what kept me in the sport, I think what we hear from the mentorship that we have on our group tonight is just caring people that kind of got us to love the sport. And so I'll never regret the journey, no matter what the outcome would have been. And my encouragement to the young athletes is just think of it as a journey, an exploration. Eamon had talked about believing in yourself, and I would say, yes, absolutely believe in yourself. And then more importantly added to that is, and as Eamon said, when you venture out into the international competition, is don't be afraid to fail. I always say is that, failure is, and I remember Tom Donnelly put it in my training book years ago. He said, success is the lurking place for failure, and failure is the stomping ground for success. And so as you move through this journey, my encouragement is to kind of stay the course, embrace the ups and the downs, and treat it as a learning experience. And if you do it long enough, and as Eamon said, as you work hard enough, but more importantly, smart enough, you will win things. A lot of people think we won a lot of stuff, but if you really did if you really did the computations of it, I remember thinking one time, I think I might have won about 2 out of every 10 races. And it doesn't sound great, but if you win some significant ones, they kind of last forever, as the night that we all came together and we ran for that 4 by mile. But I think what young kids today is have faith in yourself, embrace the ups and downs, and enjoy the journey. And what comes of it, and resist the temptation to feel I'll only do it if I think I'm going to win a medal. I'll only do it if I think I'm going to break a record. You have to kind of take it back a step and kind of say to yourself, I want to do this. This is something that I enjoy doing. The comradeship, the engagement of mentorships and coaches. And I think that's what makes you truly stay in the sport for a very, very long time. And the results will speak for itself at the end.
I think sometimes we worry too much about the outcome and not enough about the process. Yes, you've got to have goals and you've got to set lofty goals. But once you set them, you shouldn't worry about whether you achieve them on a week-to-week basis. You should just worry about getting the process done, and the outcome will generally take care of itself. You've got to get out of your comfort zone, because your career begins when you get out of your comfort zone.
But I go back to your question, Frank, to me earlier about when we came to America, and maybe it ties it into this, that that first year for all of us was hard. It was a huge transition. But I think what we all came through, all of us connect here, is that you just have to stick with it. And so my message to the athletes is, running is hard. Sport is not easy, and competition is difficult, and you have your ups and downs, but all of us just stuck with it. It took us a couple of years. Marcus and Frank and Eamon, we all had our and Frank, because you saw me at Tennessee. I was 17 when I came to school here. I struggled, but I think we just stuck with it. It was a bit of a boot camp in a way, but running is that. It's not all, it doesn't all come vertically. You don't just train and then next week you run great. You have bad races, and as Marcus says, you won 2 out of every 10 sometimes, but eventually your level raise. So I would just say, just stick with it, believe in your coach, have faith, and foster a love of the sport. Just enjoy running for the right reasons, and if you just stick with it, your time will come.
Eamon, Marcus, Frank, and Ray, you've left us with some magic memories over the years. None more so, I suppose, than that night in Belfield that will last in so many of our memories for as long as we're able to remember. And it's just been absolutely wonderful that you've made the effort and come together tonight, and I hope it means as much to each of you as it does to myself, because I find it's been wonderful. It's been emotional. It takes me right back to that evening in Belfield, and the celebration and the great night, and the giving. You've all been giving to athletics over the years as well, because anytime I ever asked you when I was doing Irish Runner, you were immediately helpful, and I know you were helpful to a lot of athletes and to coaches along the way as well. So I just want to say a very, very sincere thank you to all of you. And who knows, maybe we'll end up having a Zoom meeting again before too long. But tonight is very special, and I can't thank you enough for making the effort. Thanks a whole lot.
And yes, they do need your support and your applause as they come along. Stepping a little first away from Eamon Coughlin, but Eamon narrowing the gap again. Armstrong and John Tracy now coming up at the second place behind him. And the time for the second lap, 60.59. 60.59 for the second lap of here. John Tracy right on his shoulder. And 62 seconds now for that particular lap. 3:1.8 after 3 laps. 3 minutes, 1.8 seconds after 3 laps. And John Tracy now looks as if he's going to put in his challenge again on the back straight. Eamon Coughlin holding him off with that familiar digging in of the chin. Coming up to the first handover then is Ireland Day in the lead. John Tracy giving it everything as they hand over now.
But Marcus O'Sullivan taking it up for the Ireland A team. Tommy Maloney. Approximately 61 seconds for the last lap, and here's where we need one from Marcus. Come on, you can be in the record and test the same as the runners. Good morning, Marcus. Good luck, Frank. Good luck, Lee.
And Frank O'Mara takes it up. Looking very strongly onto that first barn.
4 seconds ahead of schedule.
So Frank O'Mara coming down into Fitzpatrick behind him. And that's the sound that they need to hear. 3 minutes and 55-second mile by Marcus O'Sullivan, by the way. That gives you an idea of the quality of the running. Well, the talk around here is that a world record is, may very well definitely be on. It's a nice contradiction in terms, but so much of it really depends on yourselves. Frank O'Mara coming down. Enda Fitzpatrick, remember, behind him. Come on, Frank. 60-second lap there, we're told. And as he hits the straight, let's hear it for him one more time. Well, 61 seconds we heard for that lap. Big straight. And he'll hand over to Ray Flynn for the fourth and final mile. There goes Ray Flynn. Good luck to him. Jimmy.
Yes, good luck to Ray. They are naked 7 seconds under the stretch. Jim here has the split.
And 354.9 and Frank O'Mara at 356.7. Now these splits are unofficial, but that's roughly it. Thank you.
New name in the record books of international track and field. Eamon Coughlin, the lead off. Marcus O'Sullivan, the second mile. Frank O'Mara, the third. And the bell for Ray Flynn.
Well, 61
Stand back just a little. He needs your encouragement this match. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, and lift Raymond Flynn. Ray Flynn. But will the B team break the European record? Will we have two in the one day? So to speak. Ray Flynn, it's a great run. That's the word. We'll have the official time in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, rise to them. We have a new world 4x1 mile track record. David Taylor, come on, a last spurt for that European time.
And these are the men who've done it 10 seconds off the world record unofficially, and this fella, Eamon Coughlin, reckoned he wasn't fit before. What about that for a run?
Well, I still reckon I'm not fit, but that's what you call a gutsy run. I didn't want to put myself under too much pressure either, because I realised that it was going to be a tough record to break, and I just ran my guts out so as the boys wouldn't have too much work to do.
Well, Ray Flynn was at the very end. That must have given you a delightful feeling to know that you were killing that record.
Well, it was a great cushion after the other three runners having run so terrific in their legs. And I felt a lot less pressure than I thought I was going to feel, and it was really wonderful.
Marcus O'Sullivan, next to you. Great day out.
Thank you very much. I think we owe an awful lot to the crowd. They were tremendous, and to me, that attributed to a lot of my run, which attributed to the team as a whole.
And the man on the end is Frank O'Mara, and I noticed you were being pulled along by the Ireland Sea runner there. You weren't going to be let this one slip at all.
Well, of course, I couldn't leave the seat fellow finish in front of me, but Liam did a fantastic job, and he saw the opportunity to take me along, and it's about time we did this at an Irish 4x1 mile team. We've had the troops for a long time. I think John O'Shea just put us together for a great cause.
All credit due to John for getting us together. We would never have gotten together otherwise.
Exactly, yeah.
I think he should give up being a newspaper reporter and become a salesman from now on.
Yeah.
Well, you world record holders, 4x1 mile. Eamon Coughlin, Ray Flynn, Marcus O'Sullivan and Frank O'Mara.